Hello, my name is Danny Blank, and we are continuing with the theme, extending the growing season. This is a series of talks on how farmers can move toward year-round production, make their farms more productive and profitable. On this final session, we want to talk about foliage plants, or what we would call perennial greens. Perennial greens are usually trees or shrubs that have edible leaves that can be either eaten raw or cooked, and that are perennial in nature. We say at Echo, with perennial greens, you can plant it once and harvest for 30 years. It's a phenomenal concept, and it's a great reality that you have these plants that are like spinach trees that you only need to plant once, and they can feed you for a lifetime. And there are a whole number of plant species that fit this category. But again, like so many other of the subjects we've talked about, are underrepresented on farms, either because of roaming animals, which also know of their great nutritious and potential, or just because they are previously unknown. They may not be native to that area. Or they just haven't been emphasized enough. Most farmers, in my experience, depend on annual greens, something like collards or kale or Swiss chard. And these are excellent greens. I think they're wonderful contributions to farmers' diets, and they can add valuable income to families. But they are short-lived, and they must be planted every year. Again, perennial greens are those you plant once and can harvest for a lifetime. So even though this category of plants may seem minor in their stature and their appearance, but they are amazing in terms of their nutrition and the incredible contribution they make to families' food, their sources of food. They are usually very durable, tough plants, and they can survive dry seasons and wet seasons. And those are the type of plants I'm going to be focusing on. They're less impacted by disease and insect pressure than the common annual vegetables. I was speaking to another Echo employee who recently came back from Haiti, and she was visiting a place where they had stopped doing vegetable gardening. There's a place that Echo had helped work in and get this group started with growing vegetables on raised beds. And they were no longer using this area. And you could see that even though the vegetable beds were not producing anything because the garden had been neglected, the whole perimeter around the vegetables beds was planted in perennial greens like Chaya, K-tuck, and basket vine. And these were just still thriving. And so in the absence of people intervening and watering, these shrubs and trees were prospering and had lots of food in their leaves. So we're going to be focusing on these types of species, and they're those that can be easily propagated and maintained. And these can make great additions outside of homes, even in refugee camps, around schools and hospitals. These dark leafy greens are generally packed with nutrients and vitamins such as iron, calcium, and vitamin A. In some cases, high amounts of protein, all of which can be deficient in children and especially nursing women. We will be taking a look during this short session at several species that are superior, excellent perennial greens, and see examples from various countries. They are an essential part of moving farm families toward realizing that higher productivity on their farms and in their yards as they realize or as they increase their dependence on these perennial greens and take advantage of that available sunlight and heat. I want to first show a picture of Chaya. Chaya is a fantastic perennial green. It's native to Mexico, and it's a plant that is so easy to establish. You can just take a cutting and stick it in the ground. It can be out of the ground for even several weeks. You don't have to plant it right away, though it's advisable to. It's just a tough plant. And I was working with a children's home in the Bahamas where it was so difficult to grow, and almost everything we planted in the gardens was devoured by insects. But the Chaya was left alone, and they used it on a regular basis to feed the children in the children's home. And they just had several bushes planted around. You can see this in this picture, and it was planted among fruit trees. So it was just a real great example of how this plant just thrived in a very rough environment where it was exposed to a lot of wind. It was very near the ocean, and so it got even some salt breeze, which can be devastating to a number of plants. Chaya can be used and planted it in a hedge, and so you can plant a lot of it in a small area, and you can let it grow tall, or you can maintain it as a small hedgerow. It also makes a great animal feed for ruminants, and it's been reported as a good animal feed for even chickens. Chaya does need to be cooked to be used, and that is usually of no problem, because most people, for example, in Africa, cooked greens is a common part of people's diet. Here you see Chaya in Zimbabwe, and there it was also used at a children's home, and so it's just a really tough plant. It fits that criteria of being easy to propagate, easy to manage, durable, tolerates drought, tolerates really wet conditions. The next one I want to talk about is Moringa. Moringa is a fantastic plant. It is one that handles incredibly dry conditions and produces a leaf that is incredibly nutritious. You see a picture here of it growing where hardly anything else is growing in Mozambique, and it's an incredible nutritious leaf. Some people don't even realize it. They have it right outside their homes and don't realize how significant it really is. There are many ways to produce it. You can let it grow up tall as a tree, or you can manage it low as a shrub. In some cases, I've seen it managed really low, where it's harvested in usually better soils where it has a fast regrowth. We don't have those kind of soils at Echo, and so we let it get bigger before we harvest leaves from it. You can see some examples here in Haiti where the leaves are harvested. I've seen leaf production centers in Zimbabwe and again in Haiti where you just see this plant thriving. And there's just been some incredible testimonials that we've received from people, how significant it has been, especially to women and children. And I just have some pictures on how that leaf process is made. The leaves can be dried and turned into a powder, and it can make an incredible contribution. It is said that, with just several rounded tablespoons, you can achieve nearly half the protein needs of a child in a day with just the Moringa leaf. That information is available through Echo. It teaches, we have a document with pictures on how to prepare the leaves and turn it into a powder, and use that powder then for nursing mothers and for children in literally reversing the devastating trend of malnourishment in children. I mean, it's been unbelievable in places like Senegal where the children's health was where the child was close to dying, and through Moringa powder was able to have their health restored. Another great perennial green, and it's commonly overlooked and may not seem that important, is garlic chives. Almost every culture in the world uses some relative of onion. in their cooking. And yet onions themselves are grown as an annual. You plant them, and you harvest them 3 or 5 months, later. And yes, onions can store well, but you have to provide a good growing conditions for them. The seed is sometimes hard to get, and so the garlic chives is one of the few in this family that you can plant it once, and from that you can continuously harvest. We have a tire at Echo, for example, that's been full of garlic chives for I think over 15 years now. And from that one, it has spread to Haiti, to the island of Laganov, and from Laganov Island, it went to the central plateau of Haiti, where when I talked to a missionary there, and he said, I was asked what was the most significant vegetable or plant that he had introduced to the area. It was garlic chives. And I was just there recently, and it was incredible, the amount of garlic chives in people's homes. Why? Because it can handle neglect. I'm not suggesting that you do neglect, but it can handle it. It's durable. It's tough. If you have to go away for the weekend, or your wife is in the hospital and you have to leave your gardens, these perennial greens are survivors. So just some examples of garlic chives. Another great perennial green is Malabar spinach, and I've seen it growing. It's in some very tough conditions, very dry conditions, the smaller leaf type, and then the bigger leaf type in more humid, wet conditions. And we have these seeds available at Echo if you're interested in trying them. We were in an area of Mozambique where there was hardly anything green, and right outside somebody's yard where it was probably getting some of the water dumped from doing the dishes or something. But in this very small yard, the size of a bedroom almost, this vining plant was growing up the wall, and we stopped, and they shared cuttings with us because we didn't have this variety when we were traveling through this part of Mozambique, and this family shared cuttings with us, and it was fantastic. It's another great cooked green. Basket vine is another wonderful perennial green. It is a survivor. I had a Haitian come to our farm, and he saw the basket vine growing at Echo, and he almost broke down in tears because he said he was, years and years ago, he was so sick that he couldn't hold food down, and one of the ladies in a village took him in and nursed him back to health with the juice from the basket vine. I don't know the process she used, but he said it was, he couldn't hold down solid foods, and so she had used a preparation of basket vine leaf, and that's what he ate for a significant period, and his health was restored, and he thought he was going to die. And so he then had come to the United States and found a job here and was working, and he came to see our nursery, and he saw a basket vine and almost went into tears. It's one of our preferred plants that we actually use it a lot for feeding our rabbits. The rabbits really like it, and then we will cook with it as our own food on the young growth. The young growth is nice and tender, and it's just a trooper. It's a strong, just a real tough plant. So this concludes the session on perennial greens. There are other perennial greens that are worth trying as well. I just wanted to mention a few of the real significant ones. I want to end by just mentioning the tree of life. We think of the tree of life in relationship to fruits. And if you look in the passage of Revelation where it discusses this tree, it says, "And the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations." And that is what I think about when I think of perennial greens. It's a beautiful, beautiful passage, and it reminds me of trees like Moringa, that these can be, these leaves can be for the healing of the nations.